Hello friends, Tom Downey here for NFL Daily on Chat Sports, presented by BetDSI, the internet's #1 sportsbook. We've done plenty of coaching candidate lists, but what about a candidate list for the coach himself? What teams could end up hiring Mike McCarthy now that he has been fired by the Green Bay Packers? Now, yes, things kind of ended poorly for Mike McCarthy, and the offense didn't work as well. Formerly a very highly touted offensive mind, this indicates the nature of how fast the NFL moves. McCarthy went from being a very gifted offensive mind to things kind of got a little bit stale down the stretch in Green Bay. Now, there was success with McCarthy in Green Bay, and that's worth noting, but change was still needed. Now, the hope here is that this is an Andy Reid type rebound for McCarthy, where McCarthy goes to a new team, has success, and the Packers also have success, and everything ends up being all happy for all parties involved. And although the offense wasn't as good as it was in the past, McCarthy is going to draw interest. There's already been some reported interest from teams that have fired their head coach, a.k.a. the Browns, and others will also have interest in McCarthy once their jobs inevitably open up. So we'll take a look at the top 8 teams that could hire head coach Mike McCarthy. But first, would you hire Mike McCarthy? You are now an NFL GM or owner, whichever role you want to play. You fire your head coach. Would you hire McCarthy? Type Y for yes, type N for no. It doesn't have to be your top target, but would he be one of the guys you have interest in bringing in for an interview and eventually potentially hire? Let me know in the comment section. Y for yes, N for no. So the top 8 teams. At number 8, I have the Dallas Cowboys. And frankly, I don't think this job actually opens up. But I don't think 8 jobs are going to be open this offseason. If the Cowboys make the playoffs, I think Jason Garrett is safe. Now, the one potential bright side, if you do fire Garrett and you bring in McCarthy, maybe you get to keep Chris Richard as your DC, which I know is a big, big thing for Cowboys fans. Now, for each of these lists here, folks, I will keep a projected top target as well. Now, that'll change each time. One coach for each job opening. Went with Lincoln Riley there. He will not be on the list for every single one. And there are some pros here for the Cowboys, right? If you're McCarthy, and let's say you have your pick, young talent, the ownership is patient. Yes, you have to deal with Jerry Jones, but he's shown plenty of patience with Jason Garrett. I actually don't consider Jerry Jones that big of a con. I didn't want to make note of it. But maybe you actually don't end up buying into the Dak Prescott era. Either way, I don't consider the Cowboys the most likely outcome. At number 7, a team kind of in a similar boat right now. A coach that seemed sure as heck gone just a couple weeks ago, even just a month ago. And then, much like Jason Garrett, Vance Joseph trying to save his job with a late run at the playoffs. And if it doesn't work out, typically you see teams hire some opposites. You go from offense to defense. You go from experience to inexperienced. Then that fits the mold here with McCarthy and Joseph. Now, I'll put their top target as John Harbaugh if that job comes open, or if the Ravens job actually ends up, or Ravens end up replacing John Harbaugh. The defense is very solid there. That's a good sign for them. They have some pieces on offense, but the big issue in Denver, who's your quarterback? And in this year's draft, you're not going to be picking that high in all likelihood, so who's your quarterback? That's a big red flag there for Mike McCarthy. Number 6, it is the Baltimore Ravens, and they could have a divorce this offseason with John Harbaugh. Harbaugh would fit a similar mode as McCarthy of, good coach, that it was just time. It was time for those two sides to part ways. Now, if the Ravens make the playoffs, maybe that means Harbaugh keeps his job. If he doesn't go, I think John DeFilippo is a logical target for the Baltimore Ravens. And if you're McCarthy, I put Lamar Jackson as a pro, but that assumes you believe in him. If you don't believe in him, then you're probably not going to take this Ravens job, because then you're tying yourself to a quarterback you don't have faith in. I don't think that makes much sense. I think he's a pro, but maybe McCarthy or other coaches feel differently. I'll make note here, there's some young talent, but there are also some aging defensive pieces, which could be a big problem for the Ravens going forward. Now, you saw those BetDSI odds there, folks. And today's show is brought to you by BetDSI. Chatsports.com/bet. Promo code LIVE120 gets you that sweet, sweet 120% deposit bonus. Put down $100. They're going to give you an extra $200 all the way up to $500, which gives you $600 free money to bet with. But only if you use promo code LIVE120 at chatsports.com/bet. Now, here are the BetDSI odds, the top 10 teams they think for Mike McCarthy. And I got to be honest, number 1 stuns me. I know that Dan Quinn's had a rough year and the Falcons have been banged up by injuries. I don't see them firing Dan Quinn. I don't think that should be your number 1 bet. The Bucs, I think, makes sense. Cutter's gone. The Browns are a perfect, we'll talk more about them later on in the show. The Jets and Jags also make sense. The Giants, that's intriguing, but I don't think they'll fire Pat Shurmur after 1 year. We'll talk more about the Bengals here in a little bit. The Dolphins and Panthers, intriguing dark horses if those teams end up firing their head coach after all. Carolina kind of collapsing right now with Ron Rivera, 4 straight losses. Arizona, I would like it. It'd be a very Bruce Arians type hire. I don't know if they're going to fire Steve Wilkes after 1 season, though. Frankly, as funny as it is, Arizona beating Green Bay cost McCarthy his job and probably doesn't let that job open up this offseason. Into the top 5 now of teams that could hire Mike McCarthy. How about the Cincinnati Bengals? Maybe this is the year they finally fire Marvin Lewis, but probably not because Mike Brown, I think, is dealing with blackmail from Marvin Lewis or something like that. Now, if you're McCarthy, do you even want the Bengals job, in all honesty? Like, yes, Mike Brown is a patient owner, and there are some very good veteran players, but the quarterback situation is a total mess right now, and also, Mike Brown sucks. He's probably the worst owner in the NFL, if not the outright worst owner in the NFL. Now, maybe the Bengals target someone like Eric Bieniemy because he played for the Bengals, and we know that Mike Brown likes his comfort level. So, if I'm McCarthy, I don't even want this job. I don't want to go coach for Mike Brown. He's a terrible NFL owner. And I think that's a big deal for a coach like McCarthy, who frankly could have a lot of different options this offseason. Now, speaking of options, let's say you were an NFL head coach and you get your choice of dream job. Where are you going to play? Or coach, excuse me. What team are you going to go coach? Let me know in the comment section. It does not have to be just your favorite team. Maybe you want to be in a great city. Maybe you want to go coach in LA or in Miami or something like that. Maybe you want to have a really good ownership, which doesn't really check off marks for teams like the Bengals, for example, or the Browns as well. We'll move, though, to number 4, a team that everyone's talking about now because they're awful all of a sudden, the Jacksonville Jaguars. And they have absolutely collapsed this season. Now, there's a chance they bring back Doug Marrone because they did make it to the AFC title game just a year ago. But Jacksonville, it's a mess. And at the same time, if you're Mike McCarthy, it's not that different than the Bengals job, minus probably a slightly better owner. Good defense, actually a great defense. You can build around Fournette in theory if he's actually healthy for once. But the offense is not very good. The O-line is a mess, and you've got nothing at quarterback. Now, if you're McCarthy and you want a high draft pick, Jacksonville could fill that for you. But if you don't, you're probably passing on the Jags job. All right, number 3, Dirk Koetter and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because Cutter's gone. He's on his way out. So why not replace him? Now, the big question here, at least for me, is do the Bucs also fire their front office? If so, is it a total changing of the guard? If they keep their front office, you could see a scenario where they just change out head leadership. They bring in a defensive guy like a Chris Richard or a Brian Flores, keep their current OC, who's done a much better job calling plays, Monken, than Koetter ever did. And there are some talented players, Mike Evans, Gerald McCoy, but the defense is not very good. And what do you have at quarterback? If you're McCarthy, you're basically taking this job if you think Winston is the guy, which, frankly, he just may not be. And in that case, you're probably passing on that job for a better position that has their quarterback situation figured out. All right, folks, if you like what I'm wearing, go get your own Mizzen and Main Shirt. It is the perfect gift for anyone in your during the holiday season. Comfortable.af is the site, and you are not going to find a more comfortable dress shirt than a Mizzen and a Main Shirt. Made it right here in America, and they are indeed comfortable as F, so go check one out. Maybe get one for yourself. All right, number 2 then, a similar theme here at the top. These teams have their quarterback figured out, in theory. Now, Todd Bowles is going to be fired. The GM likely going to stay, Mike McCarthy, and the focus is all on Sam Darnold. That is the only priority for the Jets, is to get a coach and get a roster that helps Sam Darnold win. You put a lot into him. He is your guy. He needs to be your guy. So you're going to go offensive for the Jets. I think Zach Taylor could make some sense. The Sam Darnold allure is a good one for the Jets. They have plenty of cap space, but they also have a ton of needs. And frankly, as good as Christopher Johnson has been, I don't think players like Woody Johnson all that much as an owner. So that could be an issue. I'll put it more in the maybe category. It's not quite as obvious as a Mike Brown, for example. But just keep an eye out for the Jets, and they could go crazy and try and go super young coach and build with Sam Darnold that way. But my number 1 choice, and I think it's actually going to be the top target for the Browns, it's the Cleveland Browns and Mike McCarthy, right? I think that makes a ton of sense. They've already fired Hugh Jackson, and they have the most obvious tie to McCarthy out there. GM John Dorsey worked in Green Bay from 1991 to 2012. John Dorsey, I think, would like an experienced head coach. Mike McCarthy checks off all those boxes, and in theory, it's John Dorsey. It's the Andy Reid 2.0 hire, right? Isn't that exactly what John Dorsey wants to do? Replicate what he did in Kansas City before he got fired? You have your young quarterback. You can bring in your Andy Reid type hire. There's all kinds of young talent. The big red flag here for me, 2 of them really. A, the losing culture, which is a big deal in Cleveland. They have been unable to break it, but a little bit more success this year. And Jimmy Haslam's not a good owner. That's going to be a red flag for as players and coaches interview with the Browns for either being signed or being hired. That's a big red flag, but I think given the ties with John Dorsey, I think McCarthy in Cleveland is a very logical fit. I will not be surprised at all. In fact, that's my prediction that the Browns end up hiring Mike McCarthy. But let me know, do you disagree? Where will Mike McCarthy coach? You can say nowhere, but I think the Browns are the most logical and most likely landing spot for now. Now, things can change, but I like McCarthy and the Browns as we sit. So to recap my top 8 teams, it's the Browns, the Jets, the Bucs, and the Jags. I like those top 4 if the Jags job does come up. And then 5, 6, 7, 8, it's the Bengals, Ravens, Broncos, Cowboys, jobs that might not be open. And frankly, McCarthy might not have the most interest in it anyway. But let me know what you guys think in the comments section.